Today lesson improve your English speaking skills every day. Speaking Head English Conversation Practice with James and Olivia.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speak Up, the podcast where we help you improve your English speaking skills, one conversation at a time. I'm James.
And I'm Olivia. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be back with you today.
So Olivia, today we've got a really practical episode planned. We're talking about how to improve your English speaking skills every single day, not just when you're in a classroom or taking a test, but as part of your everyday life.
I love this topic, honestly, because I think a lot of learners believe that speaking English fluently requires some kind of magic formula, or that you need to move to an English-speaking country to really get good at it.
Right, and that's simply not true.
Not true at all. Fluency is built through small, consistent habits. It's like going to the gym. You don't get strong after one workout, but if you show up every day, even for 15 minutes, you'll see real progress over time.
That's such a good comparison. So today, we're going to walk through a whole list of practical tips, things you can start doing today, to build your speaking confidence, improve your pronunciation, expand your vocabulary, and just generally sound more natural when you speak English.
And along the way, we're going to model some natural conversation too, so you can hear real English being used, with pauses, fillers, corrections, all of it. Because that's what real speech sounds like.
Exactly. Real English isn't perfect. It's not like a textbook. So let's get into it. Olivia, where do you want to start?
Okay, so my first tip might sound a little strange, but hear me out. Talk to yourself in English.
Laughs, I do this all the time, honestly. People probably think I'm a little crazy when I'm walking around my apartment narrating what I'm doing.
But it works. When you talk to yourself, there's no pressure. Nobody is listening, nobody is judging your grammar, and you can practice describing your day, your plans, your opinions, all without the fear of making a mistake in front of someone else.
That fear is such a big barrier for learners. So many people know a lot of English, they've studied grammar rules, they know thousands of words, but the moment they need to speak, they freeze.
Totally. And that's because speaking is a skill, not just knowledge. You can know how a bicycle works, but that doesn't mean you can ride one. You have to actually practice the physical act of doing it.
So how would someone practice this, specifically? Like, what would you actually say to yourself?
Great question. So, for example, when you're making your coffee in the morning, you could say out loud, "Okay, I'm going to boil the water first. While that's heating up, I'll grab a mug and put in the coffee grounds." Just narrate your actions.
I like that. It forces you to use present continuous tense naturally, I'm going to, I'll, without even thinking about grammar rules directly.
Exactly, you're absorbing grammar through use, not through memorization.
You could also do this when you're planning your day. Like, today I need to finish that report, then I have a meeting at 3, and after that, I might go for a run if the weather's nice.
Yes. And here's a bonus tip within this tip. Try recording yourself doing this once a week. Just a voice memo on your phone. Then a month later, listen back to an old one. You'll be amazed at how much smoother you sound compared to when you started.
That's such good advice because progress in speaking is often invisible day to day. You don't feel yourself improving, but when you compare recordings over time, the difference is obvious.
My next tip connects nicely to that. Try to think in English, not just speak it.
This is a big one. A lot of learners translate in their heads. They think of a sentence in their native language, and then mentally translate it word for word into English before speaking.
Right, and that process is exhausting and slow. It also leads to sentences that sound unnatural because grammar structures are different across languages.
So how do you train yourself to think directly in English?
It starts small. When you look at an object, say, a chair, instead of thinking of the word in your native language, immediately associate the object with the English word chair. Over time, you skip the translation step entirely.
I remember when I was learning Spanish, my teacher told me the same thing. She said, stop translating. When you see a dog, don't think perro, just think dog.
Exactly, and eventually your brain builds a direct connection between the concept and the English word, rather than going through your first language as a middleman.
What about more complex thoughts, though? Like opinions or feelings?
That takes more practice, but you can build up to it. Start with simple observations. It's cold today, I'm hungry, this coffee is really good, and gradually build toward more complex thoughts, like reacting to news, or forming opinions about a book you're reading.
I think a great exercise here is what I call mental commentary. Basically, throughout your day, give yourself a running commentary in English about what's happening around you, like a sports commentator.
I love that. James is now opening the fridge. He appears disappointed. There is no more milk.
Exactly like that. It sounds silly, but it trains your brain to constantly be generating English sentences in real time.
Okay, tip number 3, and this is one of my personal favorites, shadowing.
Can you explain what shadowing is for anyone who hasn't heard the term?
Sure. Shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker, could be from a podcast, a movie, a YouTube video, and you repeat what they're saying almost simultaneously, trying to match their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation, everything.
So it's not just repeating after they finish a sentence, it's trying to speak along with them.
Exactly, at the same time, or with just a tiny delay. It feels strange at first, almost like you're an actor performing someone else's lines.
I've tried this with news broadcasts before, and it's genuinely difficult. Native speakers talk fast, and they connect words together in ways that are hard to predict.
That's actually the whole point of the exercise. It trains your mouth muscles to move the way native speakers' mouths move. It also trains your ear to catch those connected sounds, like how want to often becomes wanna, or going to becomes gonna in casual speech.
So for someone just starting with shadowing, what kind of material should they use?
I'd recommend starting with something slower and clearer, maybe a podcast made specifically for language learners, or even children's shows, believe it or not, because the speech tends to be clearer and slower.
And then gradually work up to faster, more natural content.
Exactly. Interviews are great because they're unscripted and natural. News anchors are good for clear pronunciation. And TV dramas are great for casual, everyday expressions.
How long should someone shadow for each session?
Even 10 to 15 minutes a day makes a real difference. But consistency matters more than duration. Doing it daily for 10 minutes is far more effective than doing it for 2 hours once a week.
That's a theme we keep coming back to, consistency over intensity.
Absolutely. Little and often beats occasional and long, every single time, especially with speaking skills.
Alright, tip 4, and this one's essential, I think. Find someone to actually talk to.
Yes. All the self-practice in the world can only take you so far. At some point, you need real, live conversation with another person.
And this doesn't have to be scary or formal. It could be a structured language exchange, where you help someone practice your native language and they help you with English.
Right, there are so many apps and websites now designed exactly for this, language exchange platforms where you get matched with a partner. Some of it is text-based, but many people do video calls too.
What I like about language exchanges is that it feels more equal. You're both learners, you're both making mistakes, so there's less pressure than talking to a native speaker who might seem perfect in comparison.
That's such a good point. It removes some of that intimidation factor. Plus, when your partner is also learning your language, they understand exactly how difficult it is to learn a new language, so they tend to be more patient and encouraging.
What if someone doesn't have access to a language exchange partner, though? Maybe they live somewhere without a big learner community.
There are still options. Online tutoring platforms connect you with English teachers for affordable one-on-one lessons. Some people even join English-speaking clubs on video call platforms, where a group of learners just get together to chat about random topics.
I've actually heard of some people practicing with AI chatbots too, just to get comfortable forming sentences before they talk to a real person.
That can be a nice warm-up, definitely, though I'd always encourage people to prioritize real human conversation whenever possible, because real conversations are unpredictable. You have to react, adapt, ask clarifying questions, and that's where real fluency develops.
Right, a conversation with a real person forces you to actually listen and respond, not just produce pre-planned sentences.
Exactly. And don't be afraid of silence or pauses either. It's completely normal to pause and think when you're speaking a second language. Native speakers do it too, in their own language.
True, we all say and sometimes, even in our first language.
Exactly, so give yourself permission to pause, think, and even make mistakes. That's part of real communication.
Okay, tip 5 is about vocabulary, but with a twist. Learn phrases, not just individual words.
Yes, this is huge. A lot of learners build vocabulary lists of single words, like happy, sad, excited, but fluent speech is built from chunks of language, from collocations, and set phrases.
Can you give an example of what you mean by chunks?
Sure. Instead of just learning the word decision, learn the phrase, make a decision. In English, we don't say, do a decision or take a decision, we specifically say, make a decision.
Right, and that's something you just have to learn as a fixed combination, because there's no logical rule for why it's make, and not another verb.
Exactly. Or think about heavy rain versus strong rain. Native speakers say heavy rain, not strong rain, even though strong would seem to make sense logically.
So when you're learning a new word, what would you suggest people do differently?
Whenever you learn a new word, try to also learn a common phrase or sentence that uses it naturally. So instead of just writing down opportunity, write down I had the opportunity to travel last year, or don't miss this opportunity.
That way, when you actually need to use the word in conversation, you already have a natural sentence pattern ready to go.
Precisely. And this connects to something linguists call formulaic language, prepackaged phrases that native speakers use automatically without thinking, like, to be honest, as far as I know, it depends, I couldn't agree more.
These little phrases make you sound so much more natural and fluent, even if your grammar isn't perfect everywhere else.
Absolutely, because fluency isn't about being grammatically flawless, it's about communicating smoothly and naturally, with a good flow.
So a practical tip here, keep a notebook, physical or digital, and instead of writing single vocabulary words, write full useful phrases you hear or read.
Yes, and review them regularly, and more importantly, try to actually use them in your own speaking practice, whether that's talking to yourself, shadowing, or chatting with a language partner.
Okay, moving on to tip 6, and I think this might be the most important one, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the single biggest obstacle for most learners, not a lack of knowledge, but fear.
It's true. I've met so many learners who know grammar rules better than native speakers, but they are paralyzed when it's time to actually speak, because they are scared of being judged.
And here's the thing, most native speakers genuinely don't care about small mistakes. They're usually just happy that you're making the effort to speak their language at all.
Exactly, and honestly, mistakes are proof that you're actually trying and pushing yourself. If you never make a mistake, it probably means you're only using very simple, safe language.
That's such a great way to put it. Mistakes are a sign of growth, not failure.
So how can someone train themselves to feel less afraid?
One method is to reframe how you think about mistakes. Instead of viewing a mistake as embarrassing, view it as useful information. It tells you exactly what you need to work on.
Like a signpost pointing you toward what to practice next.
Exactly. Also, it helps to remind yourself that native speakers make grammar mistakes too, all the time, in their own language. Confusing who and whom, saying less instead of fewer, these things happen constantly, even among native speakers.
That's very true, we're definitely not perfect speakers of our own language either.
Not even close. So give yourself the same grace you'd give a native speaker making a small error.
Another good strategy is to practice in low-stakes environments first, like the ones we mentioned earlier, talking to yourself, or speaking with a supportive language partner, before jumping into higher pressure situations like a job interview or a formal presentation.
Right, build your confidence gradually, moving from safe environments to more challenging ones step by step.
Alright, tip 7, let's talk pronunciation and intonation, because this affects how clearly people understand you, even more than grammar sometimes.
Absolutely. You could have perfect grammar, but if your pronunciation makes you hard to understand, communication breaks down.
So what specifically should learners focus on?
First, individual sounds that don't exist in your native language. For example, many learners struggle with the th sound in English, like in think or this, because that sound doesn't exist in a lot of other languages.
Right, and there are specific mouth positions you can practice for these sounds, putting your tongue between your teeth for a th, for instance.
Exactly, and there are tons of pronunciation videos online that show you the mouth shape for each sound.
What about beyond individual sounds? You mentioned intonation too.
Yes, intonation is honestly just as important, maybe even more important, than individual sounds. Intonation is the rise and fall of your voice, the music of the language, essentially.
Can you give an example of how intonation changes meaning?
Sure, think about the sentence, "You're going to the party." If you say it with rising intonation at the end, it becomes a question, "You're going to the party?" But with falling intonation, it's a simple statement.
That's such a subtle but important difference.
It really is. And this connects back to shadowing, actually, because when you shadow native speakers, you naturally start absorbing their intonation patterns, not just their individual sounds.
So it all connects together. Shadowing helps pronunciation, pronunciation helps clarity, clarity helps confidence.
Exactly, it's all one interconnected system.
Another tip here, record yourself speaking and compare it to a native speaker saying the same sentence. Listen closely for differences in rhythm and stress.
Yes, and pay attention to word stress too, which syllable gets emphasized. In English, word stress can even change the meaning of a word. Think about present, as in a gift, versus present, as into present information, same spelling, different stress, different meaning.
That's a great example. Little details like that make a big difference in how naturally you sound.
Tip 8. Surround yourself with authentic English content every single day. Movies, TV shows, podcasts, YouTube videos, music.
This is one of my favorites because it doesn't even feel like studying, it feels like entertainment.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of it. If you can find content you genuinely enjoy, you'll want to consume it every day, and that consistency builds your listening comprehension, which directly supports your speaking ability.
How does listening improve speaking, though? They seem like different skills.
They're deeply connected. The more input you receive, meaning the more English you hear, the more natural patterns, vocabulary, and grammar structures get absorbed into your brain, even subconsciously. Eventually, that input becomes available for you to use when you speak.
So it's almost like filling up a reservoir that you can later draw from when you need to produce language yourself.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Linguists actually have a term for this, comprehensible input, meaning input that's understandable but still slightly challenging, pushing you just beyond your current level.
So how would someone choose the right content level for themselves?
A good rule of thumb is that you should understand about 70 to 80% of what you're watching or listening to, without needing subtitles or a dictionary. If it's too easy, you won't learn much new. If it's too hard, you'll get frustrated and give up.
What about subtitles? Should learners use them or avoid them?
I think subtitles in English, not your native language, can actually be really helpful, especially in the beginning. They help you connect the sounds you're hearing to the actual words and spelling.
And once someone gets more advanced,
At that point, try watching without subtitles at all, to really challenge your listening comprehension and force your brain to process the sounds directly.
what kind of content would you personally recommend to get started?
It really depends on interests. If someone loves cooking, they could watch cooking shows in English. If they're into true crime, there are tons of true crime podcasts. The key is finding something you're genuinely interested in, not something you feel forced to watch.
That's such important advice, because motivation matters so much for consistency.
Exactly, if you actually enjoy the content, you won't need to force yourself to study, you'll just naturally want to keep watching, and the learning happens as a side effect.
Okay, tip 9, let's talk about goal setting, because I think a lot of learners struggle with staying consistent without clear goals.
Yes, vague goals like "I want to improve my English" don't really give you direction. It's much more effective to set small, specific, daily goals.
Can you give some examples of what a good daily goal might look like?
Sure, something like, "Today I will learn 5 new phrases and use each one in a sentence," or "Today I will have a 10-minute conversation with my language partner," or "Today I will shadow 1 podcast episode."
So instead of an overwhelming, abstract goal, you break it down into something concrete and achievable within a single day.
Exactly, and this ties into a concept called habit stacking, where you attach a new habit to something you already do every day.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure, for example, if you already drink coffee every morning, you could stack your English practice onto that existing habit. After I make my coffee, I will spend 10 minutes talking to myself in English about my plans for the day.
That's smart, because you're attaching the new habit to something you're already consistently doing, so it's much less likely you'll forget or skip it.
Precisely. And over time, these small daily actions compound into significant improvement. It's the same principle behind almost any skill development: small, consistent actions beat occasional, large efforts.
I also think it helps to track your progress somehow, even informally.
Absolutely, whether that's a simple checklist, a journal, or even just mentally noting, "I did my practice today." That sense of accomplishment reinforces the habit and keeps you motivated to continue tomorrow.
And on days when you don't feel like practicing,
This is important: don't aim for perfection, aim for consistency. If you only have 5 minutes on a busy day, do 5 minutes. Don't skip entirely just because you can't do your full routine. Something is always better than nothing.
Alright, our final tip for today: actively look for opportunities to use English in real, everyday situations, not just during practice time.
Yes, this is about integrating English into your actual life, rather than treating it as a separate study activity.
What would that look like practically?
For example, if you're traveling and you meet another tourist, try starting a conversation in English. If you're ordering food at an international restaurant, try using English if the staff speaks it. If you're shopping online, try browsing English language websites instead of ones in your native language.
Even small interactions like that add up over time.
They really do. Every single opportunity to use English in a real context reinforces what you've been practicing, and it also builds your confidence for actual, spontaneous communication, not just scripted practice.
What about people who don't have many opportunities to use English in their daily physical environment?
In that case, look for online communities, forums, social media groups, gaming communities where English is the common language. Online gaming, actually, is a fantastic way to practice, because you're forced to communicate quickly and naturally with people from all over the world.
That's such a great point, and it doesn't feel like studying at all, it just feels like playing a game with friends.
Exactly, and that natural, low-pressure environment is often where the fastest improvement happens, because you're focused on the activity itself, not on practicing English.
I think that's such a great note to end on, actually, that real fluency comes from actually living in the language, not just studying it in isolation.
So, let's do a quick recap for everyone listening. We covered 10 tips today: talking to yourself, thinking in English, shadowing native speakers, finding a speaking partner, learning phrases instead of just single words, not being afraid of mistakes, focusing on pronunciation and intonation, watching authentic content, setting small daily goals, and using English in real-life situations.
That's a lot of practical strategies, but remember, you don't need to do all 10 at once. Pick one or two that feel manageable, and start building those habits today.
Exactly, small steps, consistent effort, and patience with yourself. Fluency is a journey, not a destination you reach overnight.
Well said. And remember, every single fluent speaker you admire was once a beginner too. They all made mistakes, they all felt nervous, and they all kept practicing anyway.
So keep going, keep practicing a little bit every day, and trust the process.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Speak Up. If you found these tips helpful, share this episode with a friend who's also learning English.
And we'd love to hear from you. What's your favorite way to practice speaking English? Let us know, and maybe we'll feature your tip in a future episode.
Until next time, keep speaking, keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye everyone, take care.